All right, we're still focused on how religion has been weaponized in the politics of Nigeria, and Matthew Luku is still right here with us. Now, earlier you were talking about the fact that these politicians do not have tools to use, and so that's why they, divide people along ethnic line, religious line. What about the fact that we should be, politics should be issue-based? And I think we saw a bit of that, preceding this particular election, the February 25th election. We saw different, what's it called now, debates. We saw different platforms where these candidates came on to talk about issues, to focus on what they plan to do when they get into office. But we also saw that some of the candidates didn't show up in some of these debates. So is it a case of us not dwelling more or asking the right questions or focusing on the issues that need to be addressed? Is that why we see many of these politicians focusing on religion, focusing on ethnicity and all manner of issues to divide Nigerians?
The truth is, a good number of the electorates are not well informed, to the extent that they are not ready to take the candidates on issues. So that is why the candidates or the politicians are rather looking at areas where the electorates can be, how they can drive the electorate. Because, take for instance, we have so many issues begging for answer in Nigeria. As we speak, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics told us the other time that 133 million Nigerians are extra-dimensionally poor. So one would have expected all the candidates to be addressing, before the election, to address Nigerians on how they hope to revert the trend. We were talking about insecurity just now. And you want to lead a country, and you want to go by the name of the president and the commander of the armed forces. So you should have been able to tell Nigerians how do you hope to address the security challenge.
Didn't we see that during the debate? We saw a little of that during
the debate. What I'm trying to say is, if you were basing your campaign on issues, you have so much in your hands that you don't have time to start diving into religion and all that. But because I have seen that most Nigerians want have this sentimental attachment to religion, and they have seen that most the most religious leaders have moral authority over the people. So they want to exploit it. Because like I said earlier on, that the average Nigerian politician will exploit anything at all to his advantage.
Is that what we saw happen with the Peter Obi audio that was released? Although he has debunked it, saying that it was fake. The audio released saying that he was calling or describing the election as a religious war. And then we saw the spokesperson for his campaign, that Kenneth, who was saying that he was trying to, interpret that particular audio. But then afterwards, we saw Peter Obi coming out to say, well, the audio was fake. I didn't at any time describe the election as religious war. But it's looking like that was also a way to shift attention or to divert the focus of Nigerians from the real issues of these elections, because of course the case is in court. We're supposed to be focusing on, or the parties are supposed to be focusing on, how to address the case in court, the evidence they need to present before the court of law, and not the, bringing in some religious sentiment and propaganda.
The reason I will exercise on restraint is the same reason you mentioned, that the person in question, not necessarily in court, because the person you mentioned, the candidate of Labour Party, debunked the conversation that is fake. So to that extent, I don't think I can extensively dive into the conversation as to start analyzing it. But however I look at it, you don't take away the fact that when the ruling party came up with the issue of Muslim ticket, emotion ran high, especially the other faiths. Beyond even the candidate of the political party, other members of the other faiths were already canvassing vote on the basis of an front. So for me, I think the only way we can completely de-emphasize the need to start using religion to start campaigning or start winning people for vote is to have some constitutional provision that either compel people not to fly Muslim ticket or Christian ticket, or in fact there should be constitutional provision guiding how political parties should come up with their candidate with respect to religion. Otherwise, politicians will continue to exploit it. You can't take that away.
And we also see that already playing out with the National Assembly, because now they are saying that yes, the APC has about 57 members in the Senate, and that since the president-elect and the vice president-elect are both Muslims, that the head of the Senate, that's the Senate president, should be a Christian. So we're already seeing all of that coming into play, and not competence.
But let me quickly tell you that if you look at the spirit and letter of the Constitution, that when the Constitution was talking about federal character, what it was trying to protect or what it was trying to achieve is to make sure that a particular people do not monopolize or dominate governance. So if you take that away from ethnicity and you take it to religion, I don't think it will be totally right to say in a secular society like Nigeria, one faith should dominate governance. So that's why it should be addressed.
We still look.
That's what I'm talking about. If we look at the spirit and letter of the Constitution, though it was talking about ethnicity when we are talking about spreading political appointment and positions. But if you look at the spirit and letter of that Constitution, you understand that it is talking about a people not dominating governance, and it could be extended to maybe, it will not be, I'm a Christian for instance, and I will not be comfortable if you have all the positions dominated by Christians in Nigeria. The same way, I don't expect a Muslim to dominate all the positions, political space in the country. So that's why I feel that it should be addressed from the constitutional angle.
So, but how can we de-emphasize the religious perspective, the ethnic perspective? We saw what happened in Lagos State, especially during the governorship election, where some, party agents were coming out to boldly say that if you're not voting for a particular party, you shouldn't come out, and they were, victimizing a particular tribe. So we still have that strong tribal sentiment when it comes to choosing our leaders, when it comes to voting a particular party or individual. How can we de-emphasize religion or ethnicity when it comes to choosing our leaders?
The only way you can do that is to have strong institution. Because while that was happening, don't forget that before then, we had some narrative. And those narratives were not, were fallacious in nature. And even as they were equally using some gullible ones among the people to push it. And at the end of the day, we saw miscreants being used to enforce it. And police had the mandate to protect life and property. That is where the issue of strong institution comes in. If the police that has the mandate to protect life and property were alive to their responsibility, it doesn't matter your opinion as an individual, the police would have been able to arrest, curtail, or restrain anybody who is trying to run foul of the constitution or who tries to breach peace of the society. But unfortunately, the police were not able to adequately manage the situation. Just like you said, we saw voter intimidation, we saw harassment, voter suppression, and all that.
Now, my question to you is, because we saw in the last election where certain clergy, certain religious leaders were trying to use their office, to, whip emotions of people, saying stuff like, Saul comes before David, in such a way, using their office to influence their members to be able to vote for a particular candidate. What can be done while we're also strengthening, or like my colleague said, trying to defocus attention from religion? What could be done to sanction religious leaders who use their office, as it were, to canvass for certain individuals?
I think it's a morality, because if you look at it, there's no law compelling you as an individual to say, because going by the tenets of the Constitution, you have your freedom of worship, you have your freedom of association, you have your freedom of movement. So I think it's within the context of your freedom of association, expression, and all that, that you can decide to say, I'm supporting a particular candidate. Though your body language may show that you are supporting this person because you are of the same page. sort of the same faith. But again, I think what triggered all this is the Muslim ticket from the ruling party. That's why I said when we saw that emotion ran high. And at times you don't macromanage people how they manage their emotion. That is why I feel that if you now strengthen the constitution in some areas so that you use it to compare political parties on how to arrive at their candidates and their running mates, I think to an extent you address the issue of that. Because if care is not taken, this issue of religion in Nigeria is a very sensitive thing that should be well managed. Look at the way people are easily co-opted or recruited into insurgency in the Northeast. It is because of religious belief. So you see that it's a very strong instrument.
About the constitution, saying if the constitution mandates that if you're of a particular religion, you do not pick a running mate with the same religion. But we've seen the constitution being interpreted in different ways. For instance, the just concluded election, the February 25th election, we've seen all manner of interpretation of the Abuja, 25% in Abuja, saying that it's either Abuja or you have the national, what's it called now, in the 36 states, which of course Abuja doesn't hold a special status as a state. So we've seen different interpretations. What's to say that the constitution or putting that, infusing that in the constitution would tackle the issue?
No, if you know in the constitution you have some areas where you have some laws. It is implied. It is not expressly stated that you may need to do a community reading of the constitution before you now derive the complete meaning of that particular section of the constitution. But there are some constitutional provisions that will be explicit, direct.
Okay.
In that case, you don't need to start. Okay, I'll give you an instance. Look at the issue of somebody not being a candidate in a particular constituency and contesting in another election. That has to do with, I think, Akpabio and the current Senate president and all that. But if you look at the reason they won their cases in court, you understand that there's another provision of the constitution that says before you become a candidate, you would have won primary. And people who were quick to jump to conclusion that they were already holding position were not careful to go and look at the other constitutional provision. So what I'm trying to say is, at times, you need to do a community reading of the constitution before you arrive at what the constitution is talking about, a particular issue. But there are areas where it is expressly stated. For instance, if you now have a constitutional provision that says it is compulsory. I made an instance. I say the constitution compels the president, for instance, that he must give each state a ministerial position. It's not implied. If you refuse to do that, you are breaching the constitutional provision. That
so what could be done in that case now where somebody breaches that particular constitution as seen in this current administration?
We have seen instances where people would drag federal government to court because they breach the constitution. Even currently, the issue that has to do with channel television, where channel television was sanctioned in that broadcast of Baba Ahmed. Yes. Sirab is already in court with challenging the sanction of 5 million against channel television. So if there are any issue that somebody is not satisfied, the way you address it as a government agency, if you have local stand, you can drag the government or the agency to court.
Well, but the most important thing is to make it as explicit as possible so that it does not give room for ambiguity. Thank you so much, Matthew Oluku, Public Affairs Analyst, for the insightful comment as always. And
it's a pleasure. Thank you.
A good day. Well, this is where we leave that conversation. We will be back for the personal finance segment with Charles Fakroha. Stay with us.